Hey everybody, this is Jen Kleinhans.
And I'm Rob Vose.
And you're listening to Everybody Hates Your Brand, a podcast where we talk about our experiences in marketing, from CRM to brand and everything in between. Join us today as we talk about what this podcast is, who we are, and why we're called Everybody Hates Your Brand. Rob, do you want to do a little bit of an introduction for the good people?
Yeah, sure. So why should you give a shit about what I have to say and what Jen has to say, I guess? So I've been in marketing for over 20 years now, which is just absurd and makes me feel very old. I've been very lucky enough to work both agency and client side, mainly CRM, CX, insights, running insight teams, loyalty and reward programs.
Yeah.
But also in sort of brand, more brand marketing, more brand areas. Agency side, I was head of data and CRM at DDB Sydney for 4 years, where I met Jen, and I guess we'll come to that. And I've done a bit of consulting in the UK. And then client side, I've worked for Vodafone, Disney, Activision, and most recently was head of marketing for Game, the video game retailer.
Yes.
So I said we met in DDB, but do you want to give yourself a bit of your background?
Yes. So, I mean, you may have noticed, listening to the podcast, that we have slightly different accents.
Just a touch.
We have a Brit, who is Rob.
Who talks correctly.
And we have an American, who is me. Who I would say I talk correctly, but here
except
you go.
for when you say herbs, because there's an H in it.
Oh, don't get him started on herbs and herbs. So yes, we did meet, both working at DDB in one way or the other in Sydney, Australia. Prior to that, I was at AT&T for quite a bit. I've been an entrepreneur, a designer, digital marketer, kind of doing my own thing, and then also working at companies like AT&T. And then on the agency side, doing work for companies like McDonald's, Adidas. I mean, you name it. I've probably worked in the industry or on it in some form or fashion. I think what's interesting actually about both of our backgrounds is we've both been client side and agency side.
Indeed.
It's relatively rare, I feel like, in this industry.
It seems to be.
Yeah.
It seems to be. And that's a sort of a good segue for really who this podcast is for and who we're aiming it at. I think
everyone.
Well, no. Thank you, Byron Sharp. No. I think we're aiming it at people who are planners, agency side for sure, and certainly B2C marketers. Neither of us have a huge wealth of B2B knowledge as far as I'm aware. I've got bits and pieces here and there.
I've done some B2B stuff like AT&T client side, but like, yeah, I mean, I think both of us are basically dyed-in-the-wool kind of like consumer marketers, which is cool. Mm-hmm. I think we're we're pretty like data-driven. I think we both have like CX, CRM experience and like, less of like the brandy stuff. So I think
there's some of that. I think we've both probably read enough books, and you can't work at DDB without having Bill Bernbach and his many quotes drilled into your brain, all of which are very good, I have to say. But I think, and we both work with brand planners, and so we have some insight into that world, I think. But you're right.
Yeah.
And the other thing I say, we do not necessarily. This isn't for startups. This isn't for somebody trying to get a brand new business off the ground massively. Now, having said all that, that's not to say you won't find things of value as we go through this podcast. But if you're looking for a dedicated, for example, B2B marketing podcast, this might not be it.
Try the next one over.
We will be hilarious and entertaining in equal measure, so maybe that won't matter. There are people who listen to movie podcasts who never go to the movies. So who
would do that?
I don't know, but people do. Just listen to the best podcast in the world, come out of Mayer's movie reviews.
For anyone in America that is not a podcast that you would know necessarily, but think of them as like the Siskel and Ebert of
the BBC
of England, of the BBC. There we go.
Indeed. So we named this thing. We named this podcast. Everyone Hates Your Brand.
Everybody hates your brand.
Which is a kind of a bit of a, I guess, what we want to talk about today a little bit more, which is a bit of a nudge around the delusions of grandeur that people have around how much people give a shit about their brand.
Would you call that grandeur? Delusions of grandeur?
No, because that's an awful portmanteau.
I've stolen it from somewhere.
I'm tempted to cut that
Probably
from the
Twitter.
podcast. But delusions of grandeur. That's so bad. That's got to be a book. Someone's got to have written
it. It is actually. I think someone has written it.
Really?
Yes.
Well, whoever that is, I'm kind of sorry, but not really. But good on you for writing a book. Yeah. Not an easy thing to do, as Jen is testament to.
Oh, yeah. We should probably have talked about that at some point.
We'll get to the shilling.
We'll get to the shilling.
We'll get to the shilling. But I think one of the things we talk about, have had conversations a lot about, is this idea of people massively overestimate the potency and the importance of your brand, of people the brand they work for, in the lives of the people who consume it.
If they consume it at all. If they even think about it.
Because once it's one of those classic tenets of marketing theory, that once you become, once you start working at a brand, any delusions you had about, there's that word again, had about being a customer and having a customer's mindset kind of go out the window.
Well, I mean, I think, it's interesting, like, being client side, because, like, really everything about every single thing about the brand, about marketing, about all of your products, you have to know it inside and out. And I think it's really easy to forget to kind of have, like, like the beginner's mind a little bit. Like, oh, if I don't know who Nike is, if I've never heard of Nike, I mean, I think at this point you'd have to live under a rock, really. But, if you don't know what Nike is, if you don't know what Air Jordans are, like, if you're somebody who's working at Nike, it's really easy to forget that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely it is. And I think the idea that, I don't know, you just become so subsumed by it.
Yeah.
And you place such importance on it that it's so hard to see, what's that quote from Any Given Sunday? 6 inches in front of your face. It's hard to look past the 6 inches in front of your face. Yeah. And it's a sad fact that most of the marketing departments I've worked at, or most of the agencies I've worked at, have also not been the most diverse places in the world, and not necessarily massively representative of the clients to which they serve. It's all very white, very middle class, which
very young.
Both
tends to be very young,
and very young too, which I'm definitely not. And you obviously are as young as a spring chicken. But I think there was a really interesting point that one of my kind of marketing heroes, Professor Mark Ritson, made, which was this idea that you're not like the consumer. And he backed it up with a really interesting survey from, I forget where, give me 2 secs. There's some stuff from Trinity Mirror and a couple of other places. But basically, they did a survey of ad people and then, quote unquote, normal people.
Non-ad people.
Whatever normal means.
People who don't work in advertising are normal. There you go.
Well, I think that's probably fair, isn't it, really? And the percentage of people who claim to have used certain sort of technologies in the last 3 months, so like LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, WhatsApp, Netflix, BuzzFeed, all that sort of stuff. And what was really interesting is how wildly different ad people said that normal people do versus what they actually do. So, for example, 93% of people in Adland have used LinkedIn in the last 3 months. 63% of them had used Netflix. This is a couple of years old now, but still relevant. LinkedIn in normal people, 14%. Netflix, 30%.
Wait, so you're saying that advertising people use it 14% more, or 14%?
No. What I'm saying is that 93% of people in Adland had claimed to have used LinkedIn in the last 3 months, but only 14% of consumers had.
That's because everyone in advertising is always getting fired. They're always getting laid off.
Yeah, that new marketing director.
I don't know if that's a fair statistic.
To make their mark, but it's certainly a case study of why that we're quite different to the customers we're serving, and the idea of market orientation, which is the idea that you need to truly understand who your customer is, what they are, how they think, and you can only really, if you believe in what Mark Ritson says, and I kind of have some sympathy with this, you've got to go out into the market and you've actually got to speak to people. Mm-hmm. Whether that's, I'm not a huge fan of focus groups, but going out, observing people, ethnographies, whatever it is, and obviously being a data person, using data about what people are actually doing and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And that you leave your own anecdotes at the door. What was that line we used to have at DDB? My personal anecdote overrides your data was a line we used to have on the wall because we'd heard it so many times. Well, where
not in those words, but yeah.
Not in those words.
Well, it's like the classic situation. You go into a client and you say, like, hey, the data's telling us that this person is actually, like, the customer you actually should be going after is maybe like 50 to 65. They make a lot of money. Maybe they don't look like a young, like, hip kind of like younger millennial. And they say, but this one time I was in our store and I saw somebody who was like 22 and they were really interested in this and they were picking it up and they were asking questions about it. And I really think that means that this is the person that we should be going after. I mean, it's there. I think a lot of clients, and like I've been guilty of this too. It's like I call it me search, which people may have heard this term or not heard it. So like, as in research,
so they can't trademark that.
Me, yeah, like a focus group of one, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Where you go in and kind of prepare all this research and this time and pulling the insights out and looking for patterns and things, but then you've got. And look, we don't want to blame it on clients because you see it in agencies too. Like, hey, I noticed this one thing. Hey, I'm trying to sell something for kids, but my kids don't do that. So everybody must not do that.
But
right?
it's and what infuriates me is that and a lot infuriates me, which if you listen to these podcasts over a long time, you'll start to realize.
He does get
one of the things that really infuriates me is opinions presented as fact. Unless they're mine, in which case that's fine. But the idea that if somebody said, so I've worked for bosses in the past, who said, well, my daughter was looking for such and such a product and we couldn't find it and blah, 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 or they were looking for this or whatever it was, so we need to reconfigure our website around this kind of thing. I'm like, okay, first of all, that's one person's opinion against whatever
it's also a very tactical approach.
We may have. But second of all, what it is a hypothesis to be tested. Yeah. So if it sounds plausible, okay, well, let's try it. Let's see what happens. And let's set it up in a nice experiment and run that, which is probably another podcast all in of itself about how you set up experiments, because, my God, I've seen some disasters. But the idea that that one person's personal anecdote can override data or can be used as a trigger for massive action, which I've seen websites change.
Millions of dollars or pounds thrown into something based on one person's hunch.
Absolutely. I find mind-boggling.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, that's something that you tend to see client side. Like agency side, I almost feel like there's a lot of... it's almost like a logical fallacy or just like a bias in thinking, but the bias to sales can sometimes lead people to create a great story and sort of cherry pick data.
Plausible rather than true.
Exactly.
Yeah, because our brains are wired to think plausible rather than true, aren't they necessarily? And I think that's why I personally think, I was asked to describe myself once in 3 words. I won't say what the other 2 were, but the word that I always use is skeptical. Because I think as a marketer, you certainly one that's supposed to be driven by data, quote unquote, / insights, that you should be skeptical. You should be skeptical of findings. You shouldn't just take things at first glance. You shouldn't, you should dig a little further. And to think your point about bias, I think what we're talking about really to a large degree is confirmation bias. We're talking about the idea that if presented with something that doesn't chime with somebody else, their worldview, they'll either ignore it or discredit it. And they'll seek out something that does chime with their worldview, or they'll agree with it. I've amount of times I've presented research where someone's gone, or insight, that someone's gone, oh, wow, yeah, no, that's really good. I can see that. That happened to me, or that happened to such and such and such. Or the reverse, which is, yeah, that's never, so that must be wrong. That can't be right because I've never seen it, or some other such bullshit.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing because, like, on one hand, you don't want to just take things with blind faith, right? Because I think any kind of research, I mean, this is my own personal feeling, but I think qualitative, even more so than quantitative. So like qualitative being like focus groups or interviews or whatever. I think because of like the human tendency to look for stories, the human tendency to look for patterns, I do lack a little bit of trust in qualitative research, especially because so much qualitative research is done incorrectly. That I think, you can't look at everything and either think it's totally false or totally correct. Do you know what I mean? Like I think you do have to poke on stuff. I do think research is very prevalent and problematic. But I think at the end of the day, like if we kind of bring it back to the whole point of like, why is this podcast called Everybody Hates Your Brand?
Yes, because we have
is people just get, I mean, it's guilt. You're guilty of it, client side, agency side, wherever, like running a business, that sort of thing as well. It's just you live in your own little world, and the job of getting a customer to buy into your brand or service or product or whatever, or be loyal to it, or give it more than half a second's worth of thought. it's really tough to do because you're just really stuck in a lot of research, a lot of information. You talk about confirmation bias. We talk about analysis paralysis as well.
Yes, it also affects my golf swing. Yeah, thinking too much. Too many inputs.
Thinking too much. I mean, it's hard. And look, at the end of the day, I think nobody has an easy job. I think agencies don't have an easy job. I think clients don't have an easy job. But if you are, I think, going into it with this thought that I am not my customer, even if I'm just like my customer, even if I have demographically exactly the same, maybe my customer's female and she likes yoga and she likes this particular brand and, she looks just like me. Once I go work for the company or once I do work for the company, once I look under the hood, I'm a completely different person than the person who's wandering past in the mall or wandering past on the high street and saying, should I go into Lululemon today? Are they having a sale? I don't know.
Casually glances at your brand.
Yeah.
That thing that you've poured fucking hours into because that's your job.
Yeah.
It's quite, I think, well, I forget what the phrase was. It might be a Ritsonism again, but the idea of the humility of marketing is, I think he said, the idea of humbling yourself that, as you've absolutely just described, that you are not the customers. As soon as you start working somewhere, forget about it. So the idea that, and he kind of talks about, that's why women can work on so-called quote-unquote men's brands and vice versa and what have you, because as long as you've got the mindset that you are whatever and you're not the customer and you're going to research that customer, understand that customer, anybody can, in theory, work on anything.
I think that would be interesting, like a Freaky Friday at the agency. Can we take someone who looks nothing like the customer and put them, like a Freaky Friday situation?
Yeah.
Let's put men on tampon brands and women on industrial lubricants.
But I mean, who knows how many women there are in industrial lubricants? There could be lots.
I know a few.
But I think the argument is if you didn't, that's fine. But you've got to get the lad and the ammunition to go out and find out what customers think.
Yeah.
Rather than use their own preconceptions.
Yes.
But yeah, I think this point we've talked about, is again this idea of self-importance and the idea of pricking that self-importance so that you aren't overtaken by it too much is something that's really important, and hence the kind of playful title. So it might not be that everyone hates your brand, to be honest with you. It might be that no one notices your brand as well. It might be that, to be honest with you, if people hate your brand,
you're probably doing okay, actually.
Is probably true as well.
Yeah.
So basically we've knackered the title of this whole podcast in the first one. No. But the idea that if I think about I don't know, the Colin Kaepernick, or Kaepernick, however you pronounce his name. I'm a huge NFL fan, Bears fan, but the Nike campaign that was run for that, about people burning their Nike shoes, and people of Britain, it is Nike, it's not Nike.
Oh yes, it's true. People of England, I win this one.
You do, because it's how it's pronounced. And secondly, the people of America, it's Adidas, not Adidas.
No, that's wrong.
Because it's named after Adi Dassler, who created the
British lies, don't believe
fact.
it.
Anyway, fake news. But that campaign created a huge amount of hate for that brand, but it also created a huge amount of positivity for that brand, and a huge amount of salience and brand awareness and distinctiveness and all those other...
Well, people that didn't give Nike a second thought all of a sudden hated it, which in some ways you could say is a good thing, right? And those are maybe not the type of people.
These people know who Nike are.
Yeah.
The worst thing would be nobody knows who your brand is. That's that's purgatory, if you will.
So that's it for the first episode of Everybody Hates Your Brand. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find show notes, resources, and more episodes on our website, everybodyhatesyourbrand.com. But before we go, let's leave on a positive note and share what we're loving right now. Rob, what do you have this week?
Well, in this, I guess, enforced hermit being, is there a word that's hermesy? That's probably some sort of disease. Anyway, I've been doing a lot of reading and trying to improve my knowledge and myself, as well as my golf game. And I read recently The Long and Short of It by Les Binet and Peter Field. For those of you who don't know, they've done a huge amount of work in terms of marketing effectiveness, empirical studies of marketing effectiveness. In fact, Les Binet's he's Chief of Marketing Effectiveness at Adam and Eve DDB or something like that.
That sounds right.
They brought out a report, and it's currently free, or it certainly was last week on the IPA, which is the Institute of Practitioners Advertising, or something equally as catchy. And it's called Effectiveness in Context, a Manual for Brand Building. And it kind of takes the work of the long and short of it, talking about how long-term brand building and short-term sales activation can work together, and provide some really valuable, really interesting insight and some graphs you can use to convince your finance director that actually you should spend some more money on brand building. So that's me. What about you, Jen?
Yes, I've been reading a book called Be Less Zombie, How Great Companies Create Dynamic Innovation, Fearless Leadership, and Passionate People by Elvin Turner. So it's incredibly smart. It's very practical, very actionable, just a great read that I highly recommend. I found it on Amazon. I'm sure it's available in a few more places, but if you go to Amazon, you can check it out.
Cool.
All right, so you did it. You wasted another perfectly good half an hour with Rob and Jen and the Everybody Hates Your Brand podcast. Again, you can find us on everybodyhatesyourbrand.com and your podcast platform of choice. Have a great week.
And as my mother always says, take great, great care and be vigilant. Thanks.